Hello and welcome to a very special Analog Toys live stream. I want to check I'm not muted like Laser Pants did the other day. No, I'm good. Hello and welcome to a very special Analog Toys live stream. This year, this specific month, I wish I could remember what day, but in June 1993 is when I consider that I officially became a toy collector. Something that I kind of always knew was going to happen along the way, because I grew up. My father was a toy collector. I've told the story many times. He collected die-cast metal soldiers, and when I was growing up as a kid in the United Kingdom, I'd go to a toy shop. He might buy me an Action Man uniform, and he would buy some die-cast metal soldiers for himself. And I would get home, and I would play with my Action Man on the living room floor, and he would put his soldiers into a glass cabinet in the corner. And seeing your father do that when you're growing up, you know, you automatically start to think that that's what you're supposed to do when you get older. And from the age of kind of 6, I suppose, I knew I was going to be a toy collector into adulthood. So I want to say a quick hello to everybody in the chat. There's at the moment like over 50 people watching. I can't rattle through everybody's names, so just thank you all for being here. Very much appreciated. And it's been a while since I've done a live stream, actually, on the Analog Toys YouTube channel, of course. I thoroughly enjoy being a part of the 3POA and doing that every couple of weeks with my friends Bobby and Ryan. But my commitment to that has made me really not want to do too many live streams on Analog Toys. I really want to focus on the pre-produced content for this channel. So I want to keep live streams on this channel for special occasions, and I think today is a special occasion, as I don't know if I would call it celebrating 30 years of collecting toys, perhaps commemorating 30 years of collecting toys, but hopefully another 30 years to come as well. So we have a super chat here from I'm not going to even try and pronounce that. My apologies. A little love to a brother down under. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Okay. I have prepared a bit of a slideshow for this particular live stream because I wanted to stay on track and try and go through my collecting journey, the wins, the losses, the pitfalls. I wanted to try and go through it chronologically, and I knew I would go off on tangents if I didn't have something to keep me on track. So I have prepared a slideshow for everyone. So yes, 30 years this year, I officially became a toy collector. And I think we have a super chat here from my buddy Scuba Pete. Thank you very much, Scuba, and hello to Mrs. Scuba Pete as well. He says, happy birthday, you diamond geezer. Yes, it is my birthday today. This is not a birthday live stream. I am focusing on my 30-year journey of collecting toys, but very much appreciated. And to everyone who sent me birthday wishes in the chat, my birthday is the 30th of June. I know a lot of you people in America, it's the 29th of June, but I am in the future. So thank you very much, Pete. And Pizza Knife, no message, but a $4.99 super chat. So thank you very much for that. And Jeff W., who I met at Valicon this year, says, hey, Tony, June 93, I turned 20 and my mullet was in full force. I turned 16. So I'm 46 today. Now at 50, not so much. I've collected on and off my whole life, and the last 6 years of collecting have been some of the most fun yet. I've had a lot of fun for the entire 30 years, and I'm going to take you on some of that journey today. So, and Laser Pants says, hey, where's the two good-looking guys? Well, I'm sure Michael's busy with his own channel, and and Bobby's busy making toys. So yeah, that's where the other two good-looking guys are. Let's see. I just want to. Normally, Laser Pants controls a lot of this stuff. The super chats and all of that. I'm a little bit rusty. It's been a while since I've done it. So I would also like to do a huge birthday shout out to a real regular in the live streams on this channel, on Retro Blasting, on 3POA, and that's to Tim Hayes, because me and Tim Hayes were born on the same day of the same year. So although in America his birthday isn't till tomorrow technically, but a happy birthday to Tim Hayes as well. I'm not sure if I've seen him in the chat today, but happy birthday, Tim. Okay, before I get into how I became a toy collector in the first place, what I need to do first is give you a little bit of backstory of, the toys that I was into when I was a kid. So that picture in the top left-hand corner there, I am very, very young in that photo. My parents are not even sure which house we were in at the time, because I lived in one house till I was around 3, and then we moved. But as you can see there's me and my sister in the backyard of our house, playing Action Man. Action Man would become and still is my all-time favorite toy line. I'm not saying it's the best toy line in the world, it's just my favorite. And then the picture in the bottom center there, that's me, Christmas of 1987, I believe, with the Rambo Savage Strike Cycle. I was also getting a lot of Action Force International Heroes that year. And the picture in the top right, I want to say that's Christmas 83 or 84. I'm not too sure. But that was the Christmas I got Castle Grayskull. Other toy lines that I was into in childhood, I was very much into Palatoys, Action Force. There was a whole year there where I was obsessed with Galoob's A-Team, even though they're terrible toys. I loved them anyway. I had both the 3 3/4 inch A-Team toys and the 6-inch scale, 5-inch, 6-inch, whatever they were. Coleco's Rambo was very, very big. I did start out with Fisher-Price Adventure People, and lots of other dalliances with lines along the way that never really became full collections in my childhood. So I was very into Mask, but I only ever had Condor, the toy. In fact, I'm not even sure if I owned that or whether I just borrowed it from a friend from school. Obviously, Star Wars was very big in my childhood as well. I always wanted to collect Kenner Centurions, but they were too pricey for my parents, and I think that was only a very brief period where I was kind of asking for those toys. So there's some of the toys I was into as a kid. I was also really into a lot of 70s stuff, because I've got a brother who was born in 71 and an uncle who was born in the early 60s, and my uncle's 60s toys, which primarily were painted hair Action Man figures, were passed on to my brother, and then those toys and my brother's toys were passed on to me. So I had Evel Knievel, the $6 Million Man, lots of Action Man stuff going all the way back to the 60s in childhood, plus, late 70s, early 80s Action Man stuff that my parents and grandparents were buying for me at the time. So that kind of sets the stage for you, I suppose, with regard to what type of toys I was into in childhood. Now, everything changed in 1993 because, as I said, my dad was a collector of die-cast metal soldiers. That's my father in the top left there. That photo, not sure if it was taken in 1993, but I tried to pick a photo that kind of looked like it was from around that period. He obviously doesn't. He looks more like me now than he does in that photo. We've both lost our hair completely. But these are the type of toy soldiers that my dad was collecting and displaying in glass cabinets in the house. In particular, the image there in the bottom right, the Zulu War, that is his big thing. He has an enormous library of Zulu War books and DVDs, documentaries, the films. I would almost go as far as to say one of his hobbies is being a Zulu War historian as well as being a toy collector. So my dad used to go to collector fairs like you and I probably go to today, but it wasn't a toy collectors fair. It was specifically for die-cast metal soldiers, and it was in some community hall somewhere down in Perth. I think it was down in Fremantle. And much like a toy fair, you would go in and then sellers would would rent a table. They'd put a tablecloth on, and they would fill the table with all the stuff they were selling. And my dad took me to this particular toy show, die-cast metal soldier show, because he was on the hunt for some stuff, and I was very interested anyway, even though I wasn't collecting toy soldiers myself. I was very interested in going. King Eric, the greatest of all, says, does your dad live near you, Tony? My dad lives down in Perth, where the rest of my extended family live. And he's going to hopefully retire in the next couple of years. He built a new house a couple of years ago. I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, which is a very long way from where he works, but he built that house where it is to be around the grandkids and all of that kind of thing. Me and Grace are actually looking to buy a house at the moment, and we want to live in the same suburb as my dad, because when he retires, I want to be walking distance from his house so we can have lots of beers on a Sunday and don't worry about drink driving. So, so he's down in Perth. Where was it? Yeah, so my dad took me to this toy show, and we're walking around this toy show, and he's picking up bits and pieces here and there. And again, I know I've told this story many, many times, but we came across this one table, and my dad was talking to the guy, and I spied under the table that this guy had like a large plastic tote with Action Man and Bionic Man stuff in it. And I was, tugging on my dad's shirt. I was 16 at the time, or just about to turn 16. And I was tugging on my dad's shirt, and I was like, he's got Action Man stuff. He's got Action Man stuff. And my dad ended up, I think the guy wanted $100, which was a lot of money in 1993, but it was also still quite a deal for what was in that particular plastic tote. And my dad said to me, I'm going to buy this for you if this sets you on the journey of being a toy collector. And that's exactly what happened. And what I did yesterday is I wish I had got a photo of that particular plastic tub full of toys, but I pretty much still have all of those toys that were in that tub that my dad purchased for me. So yesterday I decided, in preparation for this stream, that I wanted to recreate that initial purchase. And this was everything that was in that plastic tub. There was an SAS key figure, an Action Man deep sea diver. The SAS helicopter, I think, is the only thing in that plastic tub that is not original to what my dad purchased for me in 1993, because that SAS helicopter at the time was quite badly broken, and I've since purchased a nice, complete boxed one. I don't know what happened to the broken one. I probably parted it out, donated the parts to another collector or sold them on or something like that. But the box Action Man basic figure, that's an Australian Toll Toys box. That's the original box that I got from that purchase. The carded Mountain and Arctic outfit is the original one that I still have. And then I don't know if you can quite see the Bionic Man boxes at the back, but there was a boxed Maskatron, which I still have, a boxed Bionic Woman and a loose Bionic Woman, and the Bionic Transport and Repair Station. That's the original Bionic Transport and Repair Station that my dad bought for me. I have since purchased a boxed Bionic Transport and Repair Station in unused condition. Like, the stickers are still on the sticker sheet. It's absolutely immaculate. This one's a little bit beat up, but I'll never ever part with it because it's the one my dad purchased for me. So yeah, that was the mini collection that he bought for me in 1993 that set me on this journey of always being a poor man. So, okay, before we move on to the next slide, let's catch up on some super chats here. So, Keith Knight, thank you very much. He says, happy birthday, you damn sexy beast. Cheers. I'm not drinking beer yet. I've got to pick my son up from work later on, but I'm having a tea. He says, love from all of us here, Mucker. Thank you very much, Keith. Always great to see you here. Lester San Jose, thank you for the super chat. He said, here's to memory lane. Happy birthday, mate. Thank you very, very much. Much appreciated. And Skyfall with 10 Canadian dollars. Thank you. I support you for your clips where you talk about a certain toy line. It's done with a certain reverence and respect. Same for retro blasting. Thank you very, very much. I have a very big video that's going to go into production as soon as I finish this live stream. The top tier patrons of the channel know what it's about. All I'm going to say is it's Indiana Jones related. I'm hoping that will be on Patreon by Saturday night and then wide on YouTube on Sunday night. So, and Brian Dillingham, thank you very much. He says, for time traveling to when $2 could buy you a figure. Yeah, I remember when 99p could buy you a figure. Thank you very much, Brian. Much appreciated. Okay, on with the slideshow. So I will... One more super chat. Sorry, he's just come in. Honor Guard DC, thank you very much. He says, just for being a positive force for good in the YouTube toy collecting universe. Thank you very much. Not everyone feels that way, but I try to be. I try to be. Much appreciated. So I will always be grateful to my father for this particular moment. It's one of those moments that I'll cherish forever. And he doesn't watch my YouTube channel. He did watch the video I did about the history of Britain's toy soldiers, which was a video I made in honor of him a number of years ago. But perhaps I'll send him the link to this because I would like him to hear this story. Maybe he remembers it slightly differently to what I do. You know, 30 years in the passage of time, I might not have all the details correct in my head. I do think that there was probably a bit more stuff in this box. I know there was like loose accessories and things, but these were definitely the main pieces that were in that plastic tub that my dad purchased. And even then, at the age of 16, I did recognize how significant it was to have some packaged pieces. And I was super excited to have genuine original toy artwork on the Action Man box and the carded outfit and the Bionic Man stuff as well. So, yeah. So moving on to 1995. Now, between 93 and 95, I joined the Australian Army in 1994. And I went through some extensive recruit training and then what they called specialist employment training, I think it was, something like that. So recruit training is what every soldier who joins the Australian Army goes through. That was 12 weeks at Kapuka. And then from there, depending on what corps you join and what job you're going into, you have more training. So I did 3 months at Kapuka and then another 5 months at the School of Military Engineering because I became a combat engineer, clearing landmines and building bridges and that kind of thing. So for most of 1994, I was, locked on an army base doing training. There wasn't a lot of toy collecting going. But then once I got posted to my unit, I was stationed just outside Sydney in a barracks called Holsworthy. And there was a big Toys R Us at the local shopping mall. And that's when I first... Now, I know Power of the Force 2 came out, I think, in 94. I first saw it in toy stores in 1995. And like a lot of people... I've heard a lot of people over the years say that Power of the Force 2 got them back into collecting. Well, I had already gotten back into collecting, but when I saw this, I was running around. I was spending my weekends, the weekends that I had free from the base, driving around to all the different Toys R Us's in the area. I remember one particular day going around with another friend of mine who I was serving in the army with, who he was collecting this as well. And we drove round to about 10 different stores, spent 8 hours on the road going round and round and round, trying to get the Shadows of the Empire Slave 1. And on our very last stop, we walked into a store and they had 2 of them. So we didn't even have to fight over it. But I was very much collecting a lot of this stuff as it was coming out, probably into like 96, 97 as well. But also in 1995, I was collecting Hasbro's Action Man because Action Man had come back. It was very different to Palitoy Action Man. A couple of examples I've put up on the screen here were 2 of my favorites at the time. The Mission Extreme was a really cool get up. He was like a mountaineer, but then you would take the green jacket off and he had a hood that you would put on to make him look a bit like a ninja type thing. And the image on the left, that's actually called... I think it's the Lunar Mission set. This is a foreign box. It's the only image that I could find. Um, it was a great toy, but what I liked about this the most was the effort that Hasbro back in those days would put into packaging designs. It was just incredible. You had this lunar rover with this beefy action man with the full, Mercury mission astronaut suit, whatever you want to call it. And I was buying a lot of this stuff because as much as I wanted vintage action man, I wanted to acquire more of that at the time. This is in the pre-internet days before eBay and all of that stuff, and it wasn't that easy to come across. So this was filling that void. I was getting that collector's hit by buying this stuff in Toys R Us, when what I really wanted to be doing was finding old Action Man stuff. But you didn't come across it all that often. Let's catch up with a couple more super chats here. Not Top Goon, good to see you here, my man. He says, a birthday gift for your boss. You're always a positive guy with amazing figure reviews. Take it easy, man. Thank you very much. And I hope you've gotten over your post Valicon blues. I think I'm over it now, but it took me a while. And King Eric, the greatest of all. Thank you. He says, happy birthday, Tony. I appreciate you and your service. You've make the world a better place. Thank you. That's a very high praise indeed. Much appreciated. Okay. What is the next slide? 1996. So in 1996, after wanting to collect vintage Action Man for a while, and I had met another Action Man collector. I found an article in like the remember when newspapers used to have the classified listings of people buying and selling stuff. I came across this article in a newspaper of this guy advertising that he wanted to buy a vintage Action Man, and I connected with this guy. He was quite a bit older than me, and this guy was way ahead of the game. He'd been collecting vintage Action Man when it was actually still available in toy stores. He kind of grew up with the 60s stuff, and he became a collector in the early 80s at some point. And I met this guy, and he had a phenomenal collection of vintage Action Man. One of the best I've ever seen in 30 years of collecting, and I've seen a lot of Action Man collections in that time. He was very, very influential. He told me about the first Action Man book, collector's book that had been written. It's not a great book, the Francis Baird book, but he told me about that book and where to buy it. He told me about Cotswold Collectibles, which is still around today. At that time in the mid-90s, Cotswold Collectibles used to have a monthly kind of newsletter magazine that they would post out to people. They were based in the United States, and they would sell a lot of vintage G.I. Joe 12-inch stuff. So I signed up for that newsletter. I used to look forward to getting that in the mail every month and seeing what they had up for sale. But in 1996, I would have been 19 years old. I decided to do a trip back to the UK. I wanted to see the United Kingdom through adult eyes. But the main reason I went was to buy Action Man stuff, because being a British toy line, it was much more readily available in the United Kingdom than it was in Australia. And the photo on the right there, that's my grandmother. Who I love dearly. She passed away during COVID, but she had a good innings. She lived into her mid-90s. I stayed with her for the few weeks that I was over there. It was late in 1990. I remember it was snowing. It was freezing cold when I was there. But I took that photo, I believe, on the last day I was there, and that was my haul of swag from that trip to the United Kingdom. Several boxed Action Man figures. You can see a carded US machine gunner at the back there, a Guyper Man carded Australian jungle fighter. I got the 1960s Russian infantry on that trip. A wonderful time, really wonderful time. And that really gave me a boost to my vintage Action Man collection. Excuse me, I just burped into the microphone then. Jason Anderson says, wow, I lost my grandparent to COVID as well. She actually hit 100 before she... My condolences, man. I don't know if I misspoke then. I lost my grandmother during COVID, but she didn't pass of COVID. Basically old age. But yeah, she had a really good innings. My grandmother and I. She did so much for me in childhood and even into adult life. My grandma was someone who taught me a lot. I'm not the world's best drawer, but I can, sketch decent. I can remember my grandmother was an oil painter, and I remember her teaching me how to do shading to make an image look three-dimensional. I remember her teaching me how to draw a teacup and then shading one side to make it look cylindrical. There's things like that your grandparents, that they may not realize it, but that's something that really sticks with me, that I learned a valuable skill from my grandmother, just as I did my grandfather. He was a carpenter, and when I was a kid still living in England, we would often, once a month, me and my sister would go and spend a weekend with my grandparents, and my grandfather used to teach me about different woodworking skills and things like that. So yeah, I'm sincerely grateful to them for the life skills that they gave me, along with all the love and care that came with it. So okay, let's catch up on some super chats. GeForce Racing 20, it was great to meet you at Joe Fest, man. Thank you for the super chat. He says, happy birthday, Tony. Have a beer on me. Cheers. Thank you very much. I might actually be having a wild turkey later today because my son bought me a bottle for my birthday. So Venkman, thank you. He says, happy birthday to you, Tony. Cheers. Thank you very much, Venkman. And Anthony Whitehead, thank you for the super chat. He says, happy birthday, Tony. Much appreciated. Lots of birthday wishes rolling in today. I do appreciate that. Typically over the last probably 4 years, my birthday's fallen on a weekday, and I always work on my birthday. I'm not one of those people who feels the need to take a day off work just because it's my birthday, but because it fell on a Friday this year, I was like, it makes sense. So I've taken a day's annual leave just to have an extended weekend, and that way I can do this live stream and then get into making this Indiana Jones video that I'm very excited to make. Actually, I've been I wrote the scripts last Sunday, and then I've been polishing it all week and adding layers to it, and yeah, I'm excited. So okay, after 1996, what do we have next? Okay, so 1997, I was still serving the Australian Army, and that image there is of my first toy collection display. That was in my barracks room. I always wanted glass cabinets. It would be a long time until I actually got my own glass cabinets to display my toys in. But there's some cheap bookshelves that I probably bought at Kmart or something like that. And that was my first ever vintage toy display. You can see at the bottom left there, I've got the Action Man Space Ranger and the Space Speeder. Was that? I can't remember the name of that now. I've got the boxed armored Jeep on the bottom right. A whole heap of boxed those figures in the middle in the white boxes. Back then, you could buy these flat pack boxes that just had a cellophane window at the front. I bought a bunch of those. I think I bought those and had them posted over from the UK to display some of my figures in. So yeah, that's a photo I found in a shoebox yesterday when I was prepping this kind of slideshow for today. And yeah, I'm glad I've got that image, because yeah, that was the first time I ever displayed my toy collection. And actually, and you can see on the right hand side there, on top of the first book, where the two bookshelves go to the single bookshelf, on the right, that deep sea diver, that's the one I still have, and the one that was in that tub that my dad bought me at that toy show. So okay, 1999. I had just gotten out of the army after serving 4 years, which is the thing for general enlistment in the Australian Army. Returned to civilian life, and I, for the life of me, can't remember how this came about. But the Today section, so this was from the West Australian newspaper. the Today section was a lift out in the middle, which I think is still, I don't buy newspapers anymore. Everything's online, but I think they still have the Today lift out from the middle of the West Australian. And this was from August of 1999, August 10, 1999. The Today section lift out, it had the TV guide, and there was lots of like, they used to do, very brief like movie reviews in there, and it wasn't the general news section, it was the center lift out. And I honestly don't remember how this came about. I think maybe my mum had contacted them and said, look, I think someone I know had seen another article about a guy who had this collection of tin plate toys, Japanese tin plate stuff. And they contacted the newspaper and said, hey, I know this guy's got this big Action Man collection, not as big as it is now, but it was getting bigger. And yeah, a reporter and a photographer came around to the house for a couple of hours, took some photos and wrote this article. But the really interesting thing about this is I used it as an opportunity to see if I could purchase any Action Man collections, childhood collections that people didn't want. So at the bottom of the article, the last kind of paragraph, it actually says, anyone wanting to sell any Action Man toys can contact Tony Roberts. And it was a landline number then. I didn't have a cell phone in 1999, but and there was a phone number there. And I only got one phone call from this article, but it was a very good phone call. A guy phoned me up. He only lived a short distance from where I was, and he had a boxed Action Man assault copter, the one with the firing rockets on the side, with a nice complete helicopter pilot figure to go with it. But also in there, he had all 12 of the first vintage kind of Star Wars action figures with their accessories in really good condition. And I remember meeting this guy at like the car park of a bowling alley or something. It was like I was doing this weird drug deal. And he pulled up and he opened up the boot of his car and he had this boxed Action Man helicopter. And I think I got the whole lot for like $50. So very, very pleased that being in the newspaper actually got me, another vintage Action Man find, again at a time when the internet still really hadn't started influencing my collecting yet. I don't think I really started doing anything on eBay until probably 2000, a short time after this. So yes, Jason. He says, dang, imagine giving out your phone number in a newspaper and only getting one call. Today, you'd get absolutely wrecked. I possibly got more than one call, but it was only one call where I ended up actually buying anything from it. I actually, if memory serves me correctly, I think I got a couple of phone calls of people wanting to buy stuff from me, and it's like, no, I don't sell Action Man. I'm trying to collect this stuff, not get rid of it. So, let's catch up on some super chats. So Garrison Cavalry, thank you very much. He says, happy birthday to the best regimental historian. Thank you. That's very, very much appreciated. And A is for Apple. It says, hey, Tony, I'm glad I can make it to the live stream today. And happy birthday, bro. Cheers. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you. And Samuel Edwards, thank you for the super chat. He says, happy birthday, sir. Glad to meet you again at Valicon. I turned 50 on June 7th. So I got to celebrate it at Valicon with Jess W., who also turned 50. Good times. Happy 50th to both of you guys. I knew Jeff had turned 50 at Valicon. I wasn't aware that at the time. I obviously figured it out later. I think we were discussing it on the 3POA or something. But yeah, thank you for that. So now we get into also in 1999. In 1999, so I don't know who remembers the Rick Mayall TV series Bottom. The reason there's an image of that DVD cover there is because I don't know if it opened in 1999, but around that time, a vintage toy collectible stall It wasn't a shop; it was a stall within a existing market. I think it was the Malaga markets. Um, a vintage collectible toy store opened up, and it was open every Saturday, Sunday, and public holiday Monday. And the reason I have that DVD there is the guy was a huge fan of that TV show, and he called his collectible toy store Bottom. And the actual sign at the front had, the sign was written in that same font. Um, and this guy, Gary, his name's Gary something. He was very much a used car salesman type. And if he was buying toys from people, he never wanted to pay them very much. But then when he was flipping them, he wanted to get max dollars. But take it for what it was. I was just excited for the first time. I was always jealous at that time living in Australia because collectible toys, it seemed to be a much bigger hobby or industry, whatever you want to call it, in the United States and in the United Kingdom. And the stuff just was not readily available, and there weren't huge toy shows and that kind of thing. And even the toy shows that were on at the time it was a lot of modern stuff, and it's still kind of like that today in Perth. There are a lot more toy shows now. There's 8. There are 2 main shows that I know of, and they each do 4 shows a year. So there's 8 shows a year in Perth that I'm aware of. And you go there, and you'll always find a bit of vintage, but it's primarily modern collectible toys. So I was really excited that there was now a place I could go on the weekend and buy vintage toys. And I don't remember if I bought it from Bottom, but at some point I did purchase a nice, complete Johnny 7 one-man army machine gun toy with the box that, very similar to that one on the screen, which is an amazing toy. And for the life of me, I don't know what ended up happening to it over the years. I'm sure I sold it to fund another purchase or traded it or something. But it's a toy that I would love to reacquire once again. And the reason I've got Lone Ranger stuff there is I did buy a lot of Lone Ranger toys from Bottom at that time, and I had a little bit of Lone Ranger stuff in childhood. That was another one of the 1970s hand-me-downs from my brother. But I collected a lot of Lone Ranger stuff, and then I got rid of it. And then obviously I've rebuilt that collection since starting the Analog Toys YouTube channel, because I wanted to do a big feature on the history of Lone Ranger toys. So now in the year 2000, one of the best toy pickups of my life, up there with finding that carded Australian Jungle Fighter at the recent Joe Fest, is a friend of my brother's got in touch with my brother and said to me, hey, he knew that I collected vintage toys. Primarily, I was an Action Man collector, but I was interested in whatever. And he got in through my brother. He got in touch with me. He had found this at a garage sale or something. This very rare 1966 Japanese tin plate Batmobile with the original box. And I remember going around to meet him, and I was like, I wasn't really a Batman collector and I wasn't a tin plate toy collector, but I knew this was something quite good. And I was like, what do you want for it, man? And he's like, well, I'm going to this party on the weekend and I'm broke, and I need to take 2 cartons of beer. For those of you overseas and you don't know what I mean when I say a carton of beer, in Australia has a very big beer drinking culture. We don't fuck around. We don't buy beers by the 6-pack. We buy them by the carton, which is 4 6-packs, so 24 beers in a carton. And he wanted 2 cartons of beer, which back then, I think a carton of beer was like $20 or $22. So I bought him 2 cartons of VB, which wouldn't have even cost me $50, and exchanged it for this particular tin plate Batmobile. Then I started doing some research, and the company that made this particular Batmobile, they did this Batmobile in 3 different colors. There was the blue one, which is the one that I had acquired. There was a red one, and then there was the black one that looked the most like the TV show. Now, you would think that the black one, being most accurate to the TV show, would be the most desirable, but it turned out that the blue one is the hardest to find. It was the lowest production run, a very, very difficult toy to acquire. And I ended up selling that on eBay. And let's just say my $50 investment was one of the best investments I ever made. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was around $800 or $900 I got for this toy back in 2000. And most of that money went to fund, other Action Man purchases and stuff at the time. But yeah, a score of a lifetime, which, and part of me kind of regrets that I ever got rid of it. Part of me kind of wishes that I had hung on to it. It was in immaculate condition. The box was really nice, and just one of those deals that has stuck with me over the years. I've lost money on a lot of toys over the years as well, and things like that. But this was one of the big scores, up there with the carded Australian Jungle Fighter. Although I'm probably never going to sell that. That's squirreled away now in my Action Force collection. I recently went and bought a whole heap of additional acrylic cases to put all of those Action Force figures into acrylic cases. So I'm not getting them graded. I'm not a fan of grading, but I like to display those carded figures in acrylic cases, the ones where you can slide a piece of the acrylic out the bottom and actually take the carded figure out the acrylic case if you want to. So okay, moving on now to a period I'm just going to wrap up as 2001 to 2006. This is when I returned to the UK in 2001, just prior to September 11. Everyone kind of knows the story. That's when I decided to re-enlist in the military and do all of that stuff. During this period, I was living back in the UK. When I first arrived, I didn't know how long I was going to be staying there for. Initially, I think it was going to be like 6 months living there as a kind of a backpacker to see England through adult eyes, and I just didn't want to leave. I had such fond memories of growing up in the UK. I'm a proud Englishman, and being back there was just something intoxicating about it to me. Whenever I return to British soil, it's intoxicating. Something in my genetic makeup just goes, "You're home." So I ended up staying there for quite some time, and during this entire period, all of a sudden, I was able to buy Action Man stuff off eBay and not pay an absolute fortune to ship it to Australia. I was able to go to toy shows, car boot sales, and I bought a lot of Action Man stuff during this period of my life. So some really, really good times. Nothing in particular that really stands out. I was kind of going through some old photo albums and a big shoebox full of photos that I have yesterday, and seems as though I didn't take a lot of photos of my toys during this period of my life. But a really great time for me to, as I was mentioning earlier, as someone who was always jealous being in Australia of people who, had better access to vintage toys in the United States and the United Kingdom, to finally be there and actually go to Action Man conventions and collector shows, and as well as general toy shows. It was a really, really fun and enjoyable time of my life, and a very influential period of my life as well. So, Alejandro Flores says, am I going to see Indy 5? We don't exactly have a cinema here in Port Hedland. There is a large, at the local high school where my son goes to school, they have a dramatic arts theatre room, and they do put movies on in there, but we always get them a long time after everyone else in Australia. So I believe Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny had its theatrical release in Australia yesterday, because it's the 30th here. It came out on the 29th. Excuse me. I I don't think it's going to be showing here in Port Hedland until much later in July. I will most likely just wait for it to come out on streaming and watch it then, because I am not excited about Indy 5 whatsoever. And my condolences to anyone who goes to see it this weekend and is disappointed, but you should have known better. And we have a couple of super chats here. Last call with my friend Troy Pacelli. Thank you. He says, just something to put towards your next toy purchase or your next carton of beer. Either way. Thank you very much, Troy. Much appreciated, my man. And my buddy Drew G. He says, happy birthday, Tony. Hope it's amazing. Well, I've got the day off work. Can't be too bad, I suppose. Better than being at work, which is what I've been for the last probably... Well, no, I wasn't at work for my birthday last year because I was actually at Retroblasting headquarters. I totally forgot that. It was just after Joe Fest last, because Joe Fest was a little bit later in June last year. So thank you very much, Drew. Now we get on to 2007 to 2010. These were my years working private security in Iraq. So I'd left the British Army, got a job doing private security, and all of a sudden I was earning very, very good money. I didn't have to pay tax on the money that I earned in Iraq, and I was earning stupid amounts of money, certainly for someone who had very minimal monthly expenditure. I had a very cheap apartment in Thailand. I think my electricity bill was like $30 a month. I had a pay-as-you-go phone. I owned a moped, so I didn't have a loan for a car or a house or anything like that. And a lot of disposable income. And for the 10, 11 weeks at a time that I was in Iraq, I would take literally $1,000 cash with me, because there's no ATMs in Iraq to get money out. The PXs on the US military bases, you could buy stuff with credit card, but I would literally take $1,000 cash and that would last me 10 weeks. And I was earning all this money when I was there. So I was constantly buying lots and lots of 60s G.I. Joe and Action Man stuff, and just having it shipped to my parents' house. And sometimes I was buying stuff off eBay, having it shipped to my parents' house, and I wouldn't even see it for 9 or 10 months because I wouldn't always go back to Australia on my leave. But one of the things I did towards the end of that period of my life was I invested in some glass display cabinets, which are not cheap because I had some custom made. Fortunately, my brother has his own business, and it's a glass business. He does shower screens and balustrading and splashbacks and that kind of thing. So he was able to provide the glass at a cost price, and we went to a cabinet maker. But I think I spent about $3,000 on having two very, very large custom-made display cabinets made. And it's something that had been a dream of mine since childhood, that I would one day be able to display my toys behind glass with LED lights and all that kind of thing. And I'm really glad that of all the ups and downs of my time in Iraq, at least that time over there helped fund the glass cabinets for my collection that I have today. So, James Salzberg, thank you very much for the super chat. He says, happy birthday, Tony. Cheers. Cheers to you, James. Much appreciated. Okay, now we get on to, what's the next slide? 2011. This is, so I had actually, for those of you who don't know, shame on you, but this is Bob Breakin. He was chief toy designer at Palatoy for 17 of the 18 years that Action Man was in existence. And I actually connected with Bob Breakin online in 2010 when I contacted him saying that I wanted to embark on this journey to make a documentary about the story of Action Man, the history of Palatoy Action Man. But I didn't actually meet Bob in person until 2011. Through the latter half of 2010, we were exchanging emails. and I was writing the script for the documentary and sending, I don't know how many drafts of that script I sent to Bob over a kind of 6 to 8 month period to get his input and corrections and amendments and all of that kind of thing. But 2010 was a real highlight in my life when I quit my job in Iraq. Initially I was going to take 6 months off. It turned into about 9 months. But self-funded. It's the longest time I've ever been unemployed in my life, but I wasn't collecting a dole check or anything like that. I was just living off money that I'd saved. And I did, I think, 2 trips to the United Kingdom to interview not only Bob Breakin, but engineers, marketing guys, packaging artists, and all of those people from Palatoy to put together the story of Action Man documentary. I spent a long period at my parents' house where I kicked both of their cars. They had a garage that they used to keep both the cars in. I kicked both of their cars out for like a 6-week period where I built these enormous dioramas to film and photograph my Action Man collection on. And what a terrific experience that was for someone who had been an almost lifelong Action Man fan and collector to now be sitting down and meeting these people and interviewing them and doing something that had never been done in the Action Man collecting hobby before. A lot of people had done books. There's a lot of different collecting guides out there. But to be able to actually provide a visual and audio history of Action Man from, with my own voiceover, but also from the horse's mouth, from the designers and the marketing people and all of those amazing process engineers and tooling engineers and that kind of thing, who helped make this toy possible. Something I'm incredibly proud of to have been able to put together that feature-length documentary, and something that will forever be a highlight of my life. And that's also during the period when I had known Grace, Mrs. Analog Toys, before this, but it was during that period, because a lot of that 9 months, aside from a trip to Australia to film the collection and a couple of the trips to the UK to do the interviews, I spent the majority of that 9 months in Thailand editing together the feature-length film. And it was during that period that Grace actually moved in with me, and we got a bit more serious and started talking about getting married. And that's a decision that I have never, ever regretted. We are getting close to our 11th wedding anniversary, and we are happier now than we've ever been. At least I am. Maybe she's miserable. Who knows? But yeah, so this is really a period where my toy collecting expanded out into something else, and where I wanted to take on a much more ambitious project and not just collect toys, but trying to give something very valuable back to the community, which is something I've always tried to do since with analog toys and that kind of thing. So, Tony Robles, thank you. He says, turning 21 again, boss. Happy birthday. I'm not turning 21 again, man. My knees would seriously disagree with that, but appreciate the super chat. And my dear friends at Retro Blasting, thank you very much. Said, happy birthday, you wonderful diamond geezer. Thank you very much, Michael and Melinda. I know I saw Melinda in the chat earlier as well, so thank you very much to both of you. It was amazing to be able to spend my birthday with you guys last year. But I'm sure Grace wouldn't be too happy if I did it 2 years in a row. So thank you very much, guys. I will toast a wild turkey. My son bought me a bottle of wild turkey this morning, so I'm going to have a drink with him when he gets home from work, and I'm going to toast all of you wonderful people in the chat. So, okay, moving on from 2011, we're going to skip forward to 2013. And the Toy Hunter TV show. Now, I'm not a massive fan of that TV show because it focused too much on the monetary aspect, and it was focused on a toy dealer who was buying and flipping toys. And in some of those episodes, it makes you, for me anyway, it would make my skin crawl how much he would, in some cases, rip people off, buy stuff very, very cheaply and then flip it. That just doesn't sit well with me. That's not what toy collecting is about. Having said that, I would still watch every single episode of the show. Now, I'm pretty sure Toy Hunter came out before 2013, but I discovered it in 2013, which is why it's on this slide. And having gone through an extended period, that last year or two that I was in Iraq, as I said, I was buying a lot of vintage Action Man stuff while I was there. I had this disposable income. I was buying huge collections sometimes. But certainly through 2010, when I had connected with Bob Breakin and was embarking on this project to make this documentary, there was a lot of key pieces still missing from my collection that I felt, as an example, I didn't have the Action Man Land Rover. And I was like, I can't do the Action Man documentary and not mention the Land Rover because it was a licensed British vehicle brought into this British toy line. It's a key piece of Action Man history. So during 2010, I was buying a lot of stuff to fill very key gaps in my collection. That's when I acquired Bullet Man and things like that to fill out the Action Man team. Pieces that I felt were essential to the completion of the Action Man documentary. So after I had finished the documentary, I finished the documentary at the end of 2011, but it didn't come out till 2013 because fucking Hasbro were a pain in the ass to deal with, trying to get, because I was dealing with Hasbro UK at the time. Initially, I couldn't even get responses from them, but I couldn't come out with a documentary about Action Man without getting some kind of, in hindsight, I probably could have done, but I wanted to get permission from them. And eventually I ended up going to Hasbro in Australia, who they still weren't easy to deal with, but I eventually got a signed legal document from them saying that I had permission because they owned the rights to Action Man. They still do, I think, own the rights to Action Man. I couldn't put out a documentary with the name Action Man in the title without permission from them. So the documentary came out in 2013, and having been a collector of Action Man at that time for a full 20 years, and then going through that extended period of 9 months off work plus 6 to 8 months of prep, just fully immersed in the world of Action Man, I kind of got drunk on Action Man, for want of a better term, and was kind of not over it. Like, I didn't want to get rid of my collection, but I wasn't excited about collecting Action Man. I felt like I needed to take a bit of a break, and discovering the Toy Hunter TV show and watching that inspired me. I think in the very first episode that I watched, he acquires a $6 million man. I was like, I've got that Maskatron and a boxed and a loose Bionic Woman from that collection my dad bought me all those years ago. I had the Bionic Transport and Repair Station. I didn't have a $6 million man figure, and I started buying loads of them, boxed ones, loose ones. Eventually got the Bionic Bigfoot. I got a loose Maskatron, Oscar Goldman, all of that stuff. And I also started collecting Star Wars again, which I'd had, flirtations with Ken of Star Wars multiple times since 1993, but I'd always build a small collection, trade it for Action Man stuff, start again, that kind of thing. This time I started collecting Star Wars, and I didn't let go of stuff. I just kept collecting and collecting, and other lines as well. I think I started collecting, reacquiring some Galoob A-Team at this time. So yeah, as much as I'm not a fan of the Toy Hunter TV show, that TV show is what kind of set me on this path away from Action Man and collecting all these other properties that I remembered from childhood, and stuff that I wanted to have represented in my collection. Now we jump forward to 2016, and I want to say it was in June of 2016. There was I was working night shift. I was a maintenance technician at this mining company I was working for. I don't work for that company anymore, but I used to do a week of days. I used to do 8 days on, 12-hour shifts, 6 days off, 7 nights on, 7 days off, and then repeat that cycle. And when we were on night shift, we actually were not that busy when we were at work unless there was some kind of a breakdown. So there was a lot of time to kill, and it gets pretty boring on night shift. So I was just watching all sorts of stuff on YouTube. I was still watching reruns of The Toy Hunter, or maybe there was even new episodes coming out. But one night in June 2016, I stumbled onto a video from this obscure little toy channel that you might know called Retro Blasting. And I believe the first video I found was their Kenner Ghostbusters Part 2 about the toys. And I loved the format, the presentation, the sarcastic humor, the production quality. And I started binge watching all of these Retro Blasting videos. And seriously, within 2 or 3 weeks of discovering Retro Blasting, Analog Toys was born. The name Analog Toys had already existed to a degree because I had occasionally I would set up a table at a toy show and sell stuff, and I used to call my, not that I was running like a toy selling business, but my name on eBay was Analog Toys. My name for that toy store was that, so I just kept the same name. A name that came about because when I was trying to come up with a name, I was talking about my son, and that he's never been into action figures and stuff because he grew up in an age of digital toys. And I was like, oh, digital analog. That's where the name came from. But yes, 2016, Analog Toys was born, thanks in no small part to Retro Blasting, which is why you see in my videos, I sit next to a table with toys because I like that format. And I very deliberately always sit on the other side of the table as a bit of a wink and a nod to try and say I'm not copying him too much. But imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And yeah, so everyone who is here watching today, who is a subscriber of this channel and enjoys this channel, you have to thank Michael and Melinda at Retro Blasting, because it was their inspiration that sent me on this journey, which I'm still loving to this day. We are very close to our 7th birthday here at Analog Toys. It's I think it's the 16th of July is when I first published a video on the channel. If you look at the About tab on the Analog Toys channel page, it will say I've been around since like 2011. The channel was called something else back then, and all I had on the channel was the trailer for the Story of Action Man documentary, as I was trying to promote the sales of the DVDs. And then I changed the name in 2016, and Analog Toys was born. And that really changed collecting for me in a very big way. I used to like collecting just as much mint in box stuff as I did loose stuff. I love toy packaging. But box toys don't make for very exciting videos because you can't show a toy's play features and all that kind of thing. So I very much started to drift away from buying box. I still pick up box things now and again and carded things, but I started to collect a lot more loose stuff, or I should say primarily focus on loose toys. And I also started collecting toys just because I wanted to make videos about them. That's how I started doing Lone Ranger again. That's what last year I went out and collected all of the Toy Biz Batman stuff, made that video about, the Toy Biz Batman era of 1989. And then when I was done, gave almost the entire collection to Bobby Valor because I knew he would appreciate it much more than I would. And I just didn't have the room for this massive bat cave and all this kind of stuff. So then we jump forward to 2020. Was another very, very pivotal year because that's when I embarked on my series of Palatoy Action Force videos, which over the last few years, a lot of people have said that is how they found my channel. If they didn't find it through Retro Blasting or another place. Action Force was always something that I wanted to collect because I was into this in childhood. It's obviously it's part of the Action Man line. It's mini Action Man. But it was one of those lines that I was almost scared to dip my toe into. And then, the Band-Aid got ripped off, so to speak, when George Aitken, who is here in the chat, thank you very much, George, he sent me an amazing gift box. I mean, he sent me more than one amazing gift box over the years, but he sent me one that kind of sent me down this rabbit hole. And the next thing you know, I've produced 6 kind of mini documentaries about Action Force. One about the initial first year, which was all, shrunk down Action Man figures, and then one for each of the teams that came around in 1983. So the Red Shadows enemy team, the SAS, the Z Force, the Q Force, and the Space Force. And what's really heartwarming to me is that 2 of those, and my series of Action Force documentaries are some of the videos that I'm most proud of on this channel. And a real highlight for me is that this channel, Retro Blasting, that had inspired me back in 2016 to even do YouTube, it had never even occurred to me before that, even though videography had been a hobby of mine since I was in Iraq. To then in 2020, when I'm producing this series of Action Force documentaries, is that 2 of those episodes, the SAS episode and the Z Force episode, I was actually able to have Michael French from Retro Blasting be very generous with his time and collaborate with me on those videos. A real highlight of my YouTube career and my, the last 30 years of collecting toys. I hold Retro Blasting in such high regard, and to have them come and be a part of a couple of very key Analog Toys videos is something very, very special. So let me catch up on the super chats. So World Made of Cardboard, thank you very much. It was awesome to meet you this year at Valicon 2023. It says, happy birthday. I cannot think of Action Man without thinking of your fantastic documentaries. Your love of Action Man shows in every video you create. Thank you. That's why I've got the t-shirt on today. Much appreciated. And Keith Knight, thank you again. He says, your Action Man documentary was how I got into your channel. It's a fantastic bit of work. And I've now got back into collecting VAM again. Yeah, you're going down a rabbit hole there, Keith, with all of the different foreign police officers. But more power to you, brother. And I've made a very dear friend and mucker. That's a win-win. Very much so. Meeting and becoming friends with people like you was a real unexpected benefit of running this channel, but something that I'm sincerely grateful for. So thank you very much, Keith. And James Salzberg, thank you once again. Says, Analog Toys brought me to Retro Blasting, and I assumed you were on the right since you were in the opposite hemisphere. Something like that, mate. Something like that. Thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. Okay. How long have we been going for? 1 hour and 8 minutes. All right. Well, there's a couple more slides left to go. And 157 people watching. So thank you all for being here. And as I said, this is not a self-congratulatory happy birthday stream. This is a stream I've been wanting to do to commemorate 30 years of collecting toys. And it just so happened that the perfect opportunity was today because I'm off work. Doesn't clash with 3POA. Oh, a bit of an announcement. Bobby and Valaverse, they're at a toy show, toy convention somewhere this weekend. If you check out their social media pages, and if you're in the area, go and check them out. If you haven't got Warpath Eclipse yet, I'm sure you can get it. But the reason I bring that up is because Bobby is away at that show this weekend. I have asked my dear friend and Analog Toys inspiration, Mr. Michael French, to replace him on this weekend's 3POA because we are talking about the Mezco Indiana Jones and the new Mattel Creations Jurassic Park fundraiser. And I couldn't think of a better co-host to replace Bobby given the topic of this particular episode. Myself and Michael are both enormous Indiana Jones fans. Michael's level of knowledge when it comes to Indiana Jones far surpasses mine. But also, he has collected Mattel Jurassic Park toys over the years, which I've never done. I've never dipped my toe into the Jurassic Park world. So yeah, tune into the 3POA this Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, as always. But it's going to be me, Laser Pants, and Michael French because Bobby's out making all his Valaverse millions selling toys at a toy show. Okay, the next slide, 2022. The announcement that I was going to be that I was going to become a part of the new Action Force line. The announcement actually came in 2021 during the first Iconicon on a live stream on the 2 Cents Toys channel. Shout out to Salvador, Salvador. That's actually I love going back and rewatching that particular reveal on the 2 Cents Toys YouTube channel. Hopefully, a mod can drop a link to that in here. But 2022 was the year that the figure actually came out in May of last year. And Melinda's saying, "Yay, great way for me to unwind after my Saturday show watching you guys." Are you doing a Dreamland this weekend, Melinda? If so, I will be. If I'm up early enough, I'll watch it. I'll definitely catch the replay. But I haven't seen a notification for that yet, so I'm sure it's on the way. But yeah, if you're doing a Dreamland, please, everyone, go and watch the Dreamland. I love what Dreamland has become under the stewardship of yourself and Conrad. So I'm looking forward to that. Yes, it's amazing that, you know, after all these years of loving, you know, I collect a lot of toys, but I particularly love Action Man and Action Force. And then in 2022, my collecting and through my YouTube channel and through my military service, the culmination of all this coming together where I actually became an action figure in a toy line is just mind blowing. And now this year in 2023, I've actually become a vintage or a retro style figure as well. I still have to wake up some days and pinch myself. What an amazing way to cap off, you know, at the time, you know, 29 years of collecting toys and being passionate about this and always trying to give back to the community. So yeah, still blows my mind today. Now 2023, as I just mentioned, you know, giving back to the toy community. For those of you who watch the channel quite closely, you'll know I put this video out in May, I believe, where I had reconnected with an Action Man fan who was also a film industry veteran, who I first connected with about 8 or 9 years ago when he discovered 3 rolls of 35mm film prints that contained some original, all 3 rolls of film contained original Palatoy TV advertisements, which he spent a long time and a lot of his own money getting digitally scanned at an HD quality all those years ago. But back in those days, in 2009, things like GoFundMe websites weren't around, and I could never really think of a way where we could put these adverts out into the community for people to enjoy, but the previous custodian of these real rolls of film and the digital transfers, he understandably, he didn't want to make money off this. He just wanted to recoup the investment. You know, it costs a lot of money to clean up old 35mm film prints and have everything digitally scanned, and done professionally. So it was amazing that he reached out to me while I was on vacation. Spent too much time around my American friends when I was on holiday in Thailand, and you know, I hadn't spoken to the guy in like 8 years, and he was like, "Hey, I'm ready to move these on," and da da da. So I came up with this plan to set up a GoFundMe. I didn't want the GoFundMe to get funded while I was in the States. I wanted to kind of enjoy the holiday and deal with this when I got back. So I set a goal of 6 weeks, which was 2 weeks after I returned. But we still ended up reaching our goal thanks to all of you amazing people in the community. Everyone who, you know, even if you didn't weren't able to contribute financially, if you just shared a link to the video and shared it in a social media toy group or whatever, you still helped us achieve this goal. And I say us because it was all about giving back to the community, and something I'm very, very proud of, that we were able to achieve that goal, raise the money. The money is now been passed on to the guy who owned the film reels. He's given me all the digital copies, which are now uploaded to the Palatoy TV Advert Vault, a separate YouTube channel, which I run the channel, but it's not monetized. I didn't want to make money off this venture. And this gentleman is particularly busy at the moment, as he works in the movie industry. I don't want to reveal too much because I don't know how much he wants me to say. But he's got a job. He's got to travel overseas. But when he returns, he's going to be hand delivering these film prints to Bob Breakin, who is then going to donate them on the behalf of the community to the Colville Heritage Society, a society dedicated to preserving the history of Colville, but also of Palatoy. So I'm super proud that we were able to come together as a community and achieve this. And this is really one of the highlights of 30 years of toy collecting, because it's not just about these pieces of plastic that I have behind me here and in the collection room down the hallway. This is something where we all came together and we all benefited from it. And that makes me super proud. So I wanted to put in just a little slide and talk a little bit about this. And I hope you've all had the opportunity to go over to the Palatoy TV Advert Vault and check out some of these commercials, because they're just killer. There's Star Wars, there's Mego, lots of Discovery Time toys, from when we were a little bit younger. Do you remember the tree house that used to pop open with the minifigures? Every kid in England had one of those. I had forgotten all about it until I saw a few of those commercials in this collection. It's absolutely amazing. So, okay, we are now, before I get to the final slide of today's live stream presentation, I'm just going to catch up on some super chats. So Daniel Dorian, thank you. He says, for the record, Tony, my dude, I found your channel completely on its own with Mo 2, Star Wars, Action Man, etc. Then I found retro blasting. That's awesome. I'm glad that some people find retro blasting through my channel as well as vice versa. Happy 30 years of collecting, dude. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to hopefully another 30 odd years of collecting as well. It's not something I'll never stop collecting toys. I may switch what toy franchises I'm collecting. I do get bored of certain franchises at times and have to move on to other ones. But I've mentioned before how I think that toy design, I look at toy design as like modern pop art, and I just want to keep collecting these amazing pieces of pop culture history. So Tony Robles, thank you for another super chat. It says 2022, my favorite figure in the Modern Action Force is put into action. Thank you very much. I'm appreciate that you think Desert Rat is your favorite figure. He's not mine. I like Trigger the best, but there you go. And A World Made of Cardboard, thank you. He says, I have to ask, have you played with your Stan Solo vintage Desert Rat in some of your Action Force vehicles? He's 52 and he still plays with his toys. Yes, I did. So I came back from the States with about 4 or 5 loose Stan Solo vintage Desert Rat figures. I put one in the Robo Skull just to see what it would look like. I should snap a photo of that and put it on the Patreon. I didn't keep him in the Robo Skull. I put Red Wolf back in the Robo Skull. But Desert Rat is currently in the turret of the Z-Force ATC. He's driving the ATC. I like him in there. He looks good. He also does look really good with the in the 1982 Jeep, the more kind of brown and green Jeep. Was it the AF3? I think it was, whatever that particular Jeep was. But yes, I have played with him, and I've put him in a few. What I really want to do is get the cardboard headquarters playset out again. It's all boxed up at the moment because I've got no room to display it. But I would like to get that out again and display him on the headquarters playset somewhere. That would be really, really cool. So thank you, World Made of Cardboard. Okay, now we get to the final side of the show, which is the present day. Obviously, there's me in the Valaverse War Room signing, well over there was like 1,400 carded desert rats I had to sign. There's a picture there of myself, Bobby, and Ryan, obviously the host of the 3POA podcast, which is something else I'm very proud of. That it was kind of my brainchild, but through Bob and mainly through Ryan. Ryan's done all the hard work on the 3POA, but to see how successful that podcast has become and really grown into its own thing, I just enjoy turning up every 2 weeks and talking shit. I don't have to put a lot of effort into that show. Ryan does all the show notes and the thumbnails and all that stuff. I really enjoy that, and I'm super proud of what that show has become, but I cannot take the credit for what that show's become. I really think that's down to it's the collaboration between the three of us, but certainly the effort that Ryan puts in, but also the industry inside information or insight, I should say, that Bobby brings to the table. Having that modern collector, vintage collector, and a toy designer is something that no other toy podcast on YouTube has, and it makes it Geraint Horton, you just took the words out of my mouth. That podcast is now essential viewing. It is the Top Gear of toy YouTube podcasts. So, but another reason I picked this picture, where we are at Valacon with Noah's Game Over TV, is this is just representative of the present day, where as much as I'm still collecting toys, it's about the friendships that I'm collecting. My friendships with people like Michael French and Melinda Mock, with Keith Knight, with Scuba Pete and Leslie and Matt Swafford and April, and Michael Schaefer and George Aitken. Some people who I've met in person, some people who I haven't. Master Son 42, Drew G. Please don't anyone get upset if I miss your name. There are far too many to remember right here on the spot on live TV. But this is what has really capped off the last 30 years of collecting for me, is that I never had too many fellow collector friends until I started Analog Toys. And now I have toy collecting friends all over the world. And you people, my hat goes off to each and every one of you, because you're fucking rock stars. I love you all. And to have you guys become my friends through this shared, but it goes beyond toys. My friendship with Michael French has far exceeded, YouTube and toy collecting. He's just a good dude and a laugh a minute. I love being around Michael French. But Bobby is someone who I like to throw back a few beers with. Ryan is someone who I like to cuddle because he's a cuddly man. Yeah. You people, sincerely, you fucking rock. You're all rock stars, and I want to thank you all for being here, for being in my life, and for being, whether it's online friends or in-person friends. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. And that, I think, is the perfect place to wrap up today's live stream. I want to go and get myself some breakfast. I need another cup of tea. It's very challenging to do a live stream like this on your own, where you're the only person on the screen and you've got to talk nonstop for 90 minutes. I can feel my voice getting a little bit hoarse. Yeah. Thank you all. I don't want to waffle, so I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you all for joining me on this, this brief journey through my 30 years of toy collecting. And I hope to see you all in the live chat on the 3POA on the weekend with our guest co-host, Michael French of Retro Blasting. So thanks, everyone. And I will see you in the next video. Something about Indiana Jones. All right. Take care, everyone. And I'll